in Ecuador and why I think it's important and why it's successful as well. To begin with that, you have to have a bit of history about Ecuador. Have you guys touched much on the hacienda system? A little bit? A little bit? Okay. Well, obviously, in this area, Spanish is not the original language of the people. It's not the original language of Ecuador. Ecuador actually has about 26 indigenous nations, and those nations have different linguistic groups. So there are many different languages, first languages spoken across Ecuador. In this area, it's Quechua, which is related to Quechua, which was the language from Peru, and the language of the Incans. The Incans did not have a strong presence in this part of Ecuador until about 60 to 80 years before the Spanish showed up. So it's not a huge history of Incan presence here, but it does play an important role in the history of Ecuador because the Spanish arrived, found the Incan Empire here, and the Spanish came in search of two things. Anybody want to hazard a guess? Gold. And religion. Yeah. So gold and souls, basically, is what they came for, and what they came with was disease and superior weapons. So 90% of the indigenous population was decimated by disease, and the rest was subjugated by superior firepower. That means that the Spanish were able to take over large tracts of land in Ecuador. The Spanish king would grant his conquistadors massive pieces of land, thousands and thousands of hectares of land. The people on that land would then have to participate in something very similar to the tithe system, which was the contribution of 10% of your harvest to the Catholic Church. Well, the hacienda owners took this on, and any of the indigenous communities in their territory would have to give 10% of their harvest to the hacienda. Over time, that changed to be a percentage of their annual labor. So each family would have to give a percentage of their annual labor. 1 month, 2 months. Eventually, it became as much as 8 months of their time would have to be given as labor to the hacienda. So it wasn't a system. It wasn't a system of slavery because people weren't being bought and sold, but it was very much a system of domination and oppression. The hacienda would have a church, it would have a prison, and it would also be sort of a transportation hub for the area, which means that it controlled economics, controlled justice, and also controlled religion or spirituality. You would have to go to the hacienda owner for justice. You would have to go to them for any religious ceremony. If you wanted economic opportunity, it was often filtered through the hacienda as well. It created a dynamic in which indigenous communities in this area were very dependent upon the hacienda owners' goodwill for their survival, for their livelihood. That happened to last for hundreds of years. Does anybody know when the official legislation was written that broke up the hacienda system? 1966. Yeah. 1966, the law was written, agricultural reform in Ecuador, and haciendas were broken up. They were reduced greatly in size, and the extra land was deeded legally to the community members who lived on that land, who worked that land. The haciendas would keep the best portion for themselves, and then obviously divide up the higher areas that are less fertile and more difficult to grow crops and also to raise animals. So all of a sudden, community members are now deeded land. The deeds are in what language? Spanish. What language do the indigenous people not speak? Spanish. They're also not used to the legal system, the European legal system, so they don't know how to navigate that. They've had no opportunities of education. There's another complicating layer. Does anybody know what Ecuador's largest city is? Guayaquil is the largest city in Ecuador. Guayaquil did not have a road going all the way to it until 1972.
Wow.
So you would have to go to Duran, you'd have to take a ferry and get across to Guayaquil until 1972. Imagine how difficult an area like Chimborazo would be to access if the largest city didn't have a road going over it. So enforcement of this new law was exceptionally difficult, which means that haciendas continue to function in areas like this well into the years. You guys went to Bulawayo, right? Yes, you visited the girls' part of Bulawayo.
Yeah.
You guys went, right? No.
I get it.
Bulawayo, we spoke with the founder of Bulawayo one time. We were talking about the history of Bulawayo. And he said that in the early 80s, he was tasked by the hacienda owner to go around the perimeter of the hacienda. He did it on horseback. It took him 5 days to get around the entire hacienda. Very interesting story about how Bulawayo was formed in the midst of the hacienda owner trying to salvage as much of his land as possible. Bulawayo was founded in the mid-80s. So that community was functioning under the hacienda system in the 80s. I was born before then, so I would have been born into the hacienda system.
Right.
Looking around at some of the faces, I don't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe some of you would have been born into the hacienda system, which means no opportunity for education, no chance to speak Spanish, and living at the whim of some other person for your access to justice, religion, and economic opportunity. So, given all of that, this is a very recent transition for Ecuador, especially in the highlands, away from the hacienda system. In the 80s and 90s, NGOs came in, international NGOs came in, and they did massive scale projects. We're going to come to Chimborazo, we'll build 2,000 toilets in places that have no history of toilet use. They don't know how to use a toilet, they don't have the culture, the custom of using it, and they also don't know how to maintain it. So totally inappropriate projects that had zero community consultation and very little follow-up or training around the introduction of what amounts to a new technology. They're very inappropriate projects. But it created what I call the free t-shirt syndrome. So I'm sure you guys are all educators pretty much. You've all likely received a free t-shirt, everybody? If you've received a free t-shirt, hand up for me. Everybody experienced this amazingness of getting a free t-shirt. So we all take the free t-shirt pretty much all the time, but where does that free t-shirt go? What's it destined?
Bottom drawer.
What's that?
Bottom drawer.
Bottom drawer.
Well, they're going well, and then it comes to your door.
Yeah, good well, and then maybe you get shipped overseas. You might wear it to work out, it might become a favorite pajama t-shirt. It's certainly not the t-shirt that you're very concerned about in any way, shape, or form. The $80 t-shirt, that's the t-shirt that you wear to a job interview, or that you wear on a first date, that you value and you take to a special occasion. But the thing is, even though we know where the free t-shirt's going to go, we all take the free t-shirt. We'll all say yes. And this is how my metaphor for projects in the 80s and 90s here in Chimborazo. That NGOs came in and said, we'll build you bathrooms, we'll build you this, we'll do this kind of project. And of course the communities were like, yeah, we'll take it, because we'll all take the free t-shirt. Now, at the end of the day, it isn't valued. So when Free the Children came here to implement Adopt a Village, and we were doing our needs assessments, we found that communities would take anything that you wanted to give. It didn't matter. If we suggested building a classroom, they'd be like, yeah, for sure. But that didn't mean that they were going to value it. And if they don't value something like a classroom, they're not going to take care of it. And it's not the right kind of project for them to be involved in. Because they're not bought into it. It's not a priority for them. We thought long and hard, how do we get past the free t-shirt thing? And we decided that we needed to get a higher level of buy-in from community partners here in Ecuador. We decided that the best way to do that would be, one, to tap into a Quechua tradition called the Minga. If you guys have participated in the Minga at this point, you probably talked a bit about what it is. So we decided that for a community to partner with Free the Children, they have to be willing to organize Mingas day after day until the completion of the project in order to provide the unskilled manual labor on each of the projects that we implement. It's a big sacrifice. It's a lot of work. If you monetize the value of that manual labor, it's a significant contribution to our project. It also values the strength of the community, which is the strength of this tradition of the Minga, which is this incredibly unique and very powerful grassroots organization tool. We also decided that communities would have to contribute 10% of their hard costs to a project. That can be given through collecting cash from family to family. It can be donated in kind in materials like stone and gravel for mixing cement, a transportation of materials, or any other sort of materials that they may have left over from whatever project. The third way, and our preferred way, is that they access government funds that are available. And we'll work with new community partners to show them how to go to the municipality, how to go to their provincial government, how to go to their parish, which is another layer of sort of municipal government here in Ecuador. Each of these government bodies have funds available for community projects, especially infrastructure, and community members can access those funds once they know how. Once they know how to present the project to the municipality, who to go to, how to pressure them, how to follow up to make sure that the municipalities follow through on their commitments. It's a capacity building piece for us. It's so important for us because for them to be able to access that kind of process means that when Free the Children leaves that community in 5 or 6 years, which is our goal, they'll be able to drive their own development process forward. They'll be able to organize the mingos to get the work there. They'll be able to access the funds that they need in order to buy the supplies to bring a project to life. It's a huge capacity building piece for us, and it's the meaning behind what we do. The third contribution they have to make is that they have to decide on a foreman who will oversee the project. They have to pick a carpenter or a bricklayer, somebody with construction experience, who will oversee the day-to-day of the project and who will work with our architect, work with our engineer in order to see the project through to completion. They'll work with the mingueros, the people who come and work in the minga, to oversee what they're doing to make sure that this brick goes in the right place. And our engineers will come in and then measure everything and make sure that it's all being done up to safety standards. We'll contract that foreman. They'll become a Free the Children employee, but the community has to pick who it is. With all of that, it's actually a huge sacrifice that communities are making to partner with Free the Children. And it means that they're bought into this project. They want it. It's important to them. We're no longer giving out a free t-shirt, but instead we're partnering with the community to help them achieve something that they truly will value into the future. That to us is the most important thing, because we're trying to break the cycle of dependency that was created during the Hacienda years and then followed up through poor development models in the 80s and 90s. That model is what you guys have participated in. And it's so important to us, but sometimes it confuses volunteers who come down. I give this talk to students, and they're like, well, if they're coming out of Minga and we're building a classroom, what am I doing here? Because I thought that I had to come down here to build a school for a poor community. That is kind of the old development mentality that we're trying to break. And we try to shift kids' perspectives away from this idea of being the forward, beneficent giver who's coming to save the village, and try to shift them to this mentality of we're working in partnership with a very powerful, very vibrant community that has real goals that are important, and that we're just sort of catalyzing a little bit what they're already capable of doing. And I tell them that their influence is important really for 3 reasons. The first reason is that I hear community members, after a hardworking group leaves the community, heard them say, wow, if they're going to work this hard for our kids' education, how much harder do we have to work? So it's this passive influence of us being outsiders coming into the community. They're used to outsiders being a source of exploitation that come in and try to dominate. And now they're saying that we come and we're putting ourselves to this physical labor that for them is like a punishment. You know, like, why are they choosing to come here and punish themselves? And it's your dedication to their children that impresses them in a big way. The second, and probably the most important thing for me, is that you have the capacity through your translators, or the youth have their capacity through their translators, to stop and talk to the community member who's working in the get to know them a little bit, but with the goal of saying at the end of that conversation, I'm so impressed with the sacrifice that you're making for your children, for their education, and for this community. Good job. Keep going, because you're achieving amazing things. When community members can hear that from people from outside, they hear it from me, they hear it from my staff, but we're kind of like a broken record in that regard. But when they can hear it from people who come into a community for 4 days, for a week, whatever the case may be, that has a real impact because nobody else is encouraging them along this path. It's a unique development model that other NGOs are not implementing here. And they have no frame of reference and no other source of encouragement to continue down this path. And it's a difficult path. It's a lot of sacrifice, like I said. And not one of us would be willing to make such a big sacrifice without a little bit of encouragement. So that encouragement helps them stick with the Free the Children model. And then the third reason is just that everybody loves like a young, strong back to carry heavy things and get some of the manual labor done. So of course that's greatly appreciated, but it's definitely not the primary factor that makes it successful for us to have people come and visit the projects that we're working on. In a whole other area, I mean, bringing outsiders in to see what we do is obviously a very successful financing model because people go home, kids are more motivated, they have direct knowledge of what they're helping to support, and they become more successful in their own efforts back home to support their peers overseas because of these direct experiences that they're having in communities that Free the Children partners with. On top of that, though, it's a great way to expand the global vision of students in communities where we work. Their interactions with the groups really sort of broadens their horizons and creates new possibilities for them because they don't have the opportunity to travel. But at least now they get to experience a different culture in a different way in their own communities. So it's hugely impactful both for youth who are visiting and the youth from the communities where we work. On a charity side, it keeps us transparent because a kid who donates $500 can come and see if we truly put that $500 really severely. So we have to be more transparent or more accountable to our donors than any other organization because most charities you would have to donate $100,000 to $200,000 before you'd ever be invited for this thing. With Free the Children, you can do your humble part and still be able to come and see if we're actually doing what we say we do. So I think it's hugely successful and really important. Michelle did say that some people were curious about how we choose what communities to work in and how we build a partnership with the community, so I'll just take a couple more minutes to talk about that. If we're going to enter into a new community, and when we first selected communities here, we went to the Ministry of Education. And we said to them, we want to visit some communities that you have prioritized for infrastructure development. Can you take us? We'll go and we'll visit 3 or 4 communities with officials from the Ministry of Education, and they'll introduce us to the school director, and we'll do a rapid needs assessment, literally counting classrooms, how many grades do you have, how many students, in what condition are the classrooms, do you have bathrooms, do you have running water, a really rapid assessment, and then we'll sit down with the school director and we'll just talk to them a bit about the school and a lot about the community. Is it a community that likes to collaborate? Do they come to meetings when you call them in? Do they work? Do they come out to Mingas when you have to have a Minga to do something for the school? And we really want to gauge whether it's a community that would have traction within our model. We'll go back with those rapid needs assessments, we'll analyze the options that have been presented to us, and we'll decide on the best fit that we feel will be successful within our model. We'll go back to that school director and ask them if they can organize a meeting with the community leaders. So often we have this concept that community leaders are like the community elders that come out and they sit around in a circle smoking something or drinking something and talking about the future of the community. But here in Ecuador, it's actually a very serious grassroots organization where they elect every year, every 2 years, a president, a vice president, a treasurer, and a secretary to be in charge of the community. It's a volunteer position, it's considered a sacrifice for one's community, and each family is typically expected to step up to the plate and offer somebody up into that position. in a reasonable time, which is different for every community depending on its size. So we'll sit down with the president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary of the community, and also the president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary of the parents committee, because each school typically has a parents committee. We'll sit down with them and we'll explain who we are, how we work, and we'll try to make ourselves sound like terrible people to work with. So difficult, it's tons of work, it's no fun, it's a lot of headaches, it has the potential to create conflict within your community as well. And it's gonna be a big headache, but if you wanna do it, we can talk about it. But we try and make it sound like a lot of hard work because we know that it is. It is. And they think that they're coming to get a free t-shirt. They don't realize what they're getting themselves into, which is years of hard work on behalf of their kids. If they like the sounds of things and think that their community would be up for it, they'll then call a general assembly. So we'll go back for a third visit to that community and we'll have the same talk that we have with the leaders, but with the whole community. We'll leave that meeting and we'll leave it with them, and they then have to come back to us with the response. Do they want to work with us? Is this something that they want to try? Typically it is, and we'll usually start with the construction of the classroom so that we can see, can they organize the bingo? Are they going to work to get the 10%? What is this partnership going to look like? And for them, it's very gratifying. It's very tangible. It's something that you start, that you finish, that you can see and feel when it's done. So it's gratifying for them, and it sort of helps them get a bit more enthusiastic about all of this hard work that we're asking them to contribute to these projects. And then we'll slowly start building into other adoptive village pillars, which I'm sure you guys have talked about, and get into some of our more complicated programs like a water project, which might require the creation of a water committee and the development of a water management policy for the community, and family-to-family money collection to help support the maintenance and buy the chlorine to treat the water. So it's a lot more complicated than a classroom that goes to a school that already has an administration and already serves a purpose. So it helps to start building the relationship before we get into those more complicated things. We'll also do a very deep needs assessment with the community partner. That's kind of like a census. It takes at least 2 to 3 days to do this, if not 5 to 6 days, where we work to build a big model of the community. We put everybody's farm in there, all of the collective infrastructure like church and classrooms and water or whatever may exist in that community. And then we'll do long-form questionnaires with each family. So each family has to send out a representative. They put their stuff in the big model that we make, and then we answer these questions, and they're cover everything from patterns of migration to maternal health to education in the family. And it's pretty extensive. So we'll go back, we'll analyze all that data, we'll put it all together, and then we'll go back to the community and we'll do a presentation for you. Like, this is the model that you created. Is it accurate? This is the information that we collected. Does this match your perception of your own community? And if there's somewhere that's really off, that doesn't match with their perception, we'll go back, we'll take a look at it again and see if it indeed is just a wrong perception on their part, or if we've got a data error. And then we give them the results. And they also add into that, they do a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for their community, as well as like a 5-year vision for their community, which is a process that they typically have never participated in before. If they're successful in the model, we'll keep working. Have we ever had to pull out of a community because they just couldn't organize the mingas, weren't willing to work with us to help get that 10% of the hard cost? We have had to pull out. Not as often as we've been able to break through barriers. So a community like San Miguel, we went there and started working in 2008. They were shy, they were distrustful of outsiders, and we had difficulties in working with them. Of course, we have difficulties working with all of our community partners because it's not an easy partnership. They have totally changed in the 6 years that we've been partnering. They have come out of their shells. We've seen their self-confidence, especially amongst the community leaders, have really improved. And we've seen them become so successful in this model that this year they came to the office and they came with a request to build 2 classrooms and 2 stories. As you can see, we've already built plenty of classrooms there, and we kind of feel like unless we're going to build something like a mechanics workshop for vocational training, that would be like we're done with classrooms, generalized classrooms for the community. They came and wanted to build 2 classrooms and 2 stories, and we said, look, we're really sorry, we don't think we can do it. And they were so distraught. They said, oh my, but we've already collected over $10,000
Oh my God.
towards the project, from going family to family through accessing municipal funds. They had already collected enough not to build 2 classrooms and 2 stories, but pretty much to build 1 single classroom. So it showed to me, like this to me is just like, it's working, it's working. They can drive their own development process forward. We'll send the architect, we'll send the engineer if they want the technical assistance still, but they can do this on their own. It shows that it's working. And that to me is the success of the model. That is not creating dependencies. We're not giving them free t-shirts. Instead, we're working with communities to show them their latent strengths and to bring them to the forefront and to help them use it to drive their own development process into the future. So that's our work here in Chimborazo, and that's what we're building right now in the Amazon, and we're just in the first stages of building it down there. Our relationships are very young, and it's new and exciting and full of all kinds of new challenges as well. Does anybody have any questions, any more specifics that I could help answer?
I was curious on the school, for instance. I know there's a 90 and 10% contribution in the model. So I was imagining which part, what did that look like in the school? Obviously, you had professional level designer, engineer, architect, and then certainly plumbing, electrician, and all that. But then there's also code, and Cesar was telling me about how many things have to be designed approved in the usual system, municipal, and